Welcome back to the show. We're talking about female incarceration in the United States. Why are so many American women behind bars, and what are some of the unique challenges they face? Joining us now here in our studio in Washington is Evie Litwok. She was convicted of tax fraud and served 2 years in U.S. federal prison. Welcome to you to the show. Nice to have you. You ended up in prison convicted of tax fraud. You served 2 years in federal prison. You served 2 years when you were in your 60s. What was that experience like?
Actually, I served 2 years at two separate prisons, 9 months at the first one, and my conviction was overturned. They brought me back to trial. I lost, and I went to a second. Both were federal women's prisons. It's very difficult to enter prison as an older person. What happens basically is when you walk in and you're a new person, you're easily identifiable as a new person to the compound. And veterans tell you the best thing you could do is stay under the radar. Make sure nobody knows who you are. Make sure the warden doesn't know your name. Well, I was a baby of the women's movement and the gay rights movement and civil rights. So I walked into prison as a seasoned social activist. So my ability to stay under the radar lasted about 10 minutes. The first questions that people ask you are you married? Do you have kids? So after about the fifth question of, are you married, do you have kids, and you're allowed to come in with 25 pictures, I finally said, look, I'm a lesbian, and I've been out for I thought to myself, I'm out for 40 years, I'm not going to stay in coming into prison. So that news spread like wildfire. So I was now not only an older woman entering prison, I was an older lesbian entering prison.
Where was the prison?
In West Virginia, Alderson Prison. It's where Martha Stewart went to prison. It's called Camp Cupcake, and it's not Camp Cupcake. If you're going into prison at age 60, you have a phenomenon that's happening called accelerated aging, which has been studied by many people.
Right.
So there's no medical care to speak of. There's no mental health care to speak of. I mean, the prisons will tell you that they have people assigned, but so in my second prison, which was FCI Tallahassee, there was a physician's assistant, and there's 1,100 women, and you go to see him, and whether you have cancer, a broken leg, a cyst, or a migraine, he tells you the same thing. You're fat, go walk on the track and drink water. Now, I was an activist and I was a writer, so I was writing women's stories every day, even though you're not supposed to.
And these 2 terms that you served in prison, a total of 2 years, did they change you?
Oh, 100%. I am traumatized in a way that I'm fully aware of. I will never physically, I was also in solitary confinement, so the conditions of solitary confinement the last months of my second incarceration caused me to have back problems that I'll never recover from. I started with a bad back, but it's...
Why were you put in solitary confinement?
A physician's assistant told a woman that she was fat, go on the track, and she said, I think I'm going to die. 2 weeks later, her gallbladder burst, she was dead, and I was the writer for the compound, so I emailed the story of the lack of medical care to prison, and an hour after it was posted to my website, I was shackled and arrested. You've got to understand that what happens in prison is in control of people, and there's no accountability for what they do.
Right.
So they basically said, we're putting you for the rest of your term in solitary, and it's an environment that's deadly. And we're doing this because you exposed an officer.
Okay, let me get back to Elaine in Connecticut. And Elaine, I guess one of the unique consequences of women being in prison is that when a woman goes to prison, you know, and women normally have children, they have husbands, they are wives, etc. So it's just not the women going to prison, families are torn apart as well, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. If you think about it, when a man goes to prison, the woman generally maintains the home. So in some cases, he actually has someplace to go when he returns. Some women will even move with the man as he moves to different prisons. It's not unusual. You don't usually do your time in one prison. But for women, that's not true. And when you go to a visiting room in a women's prison, the most frequent visitors are the inmate's mother, the inmate's sister, the inmate's aunt. It's female-oriented. The men haven't stuck. They have gone into other relationships. Who knows? Yes, it's a family affair, and it's terrible. And that I don't mean to sound that it's not terrible on men's families either, by the way. It is a terrible affair for any families, and it certainly has all kinds of impacts. We know that it emotionally impacts the children, that they have a harder time in school. If you want to know how a child is going to do in school, you look to the mother's education. So if you've got the mother in prison and she's not doing schoolwork, and she stopped at the 5th grade, you know you've got a problem with those kids just right there. And the same, you know, it doesn't matter. Children are made fun of when they go to school if their mothers are in prison.
Yeah.
It's not a good scene. We're not nice to prisoners. We don't want them to come back out again. We don't want them in our neighborhood.
Right, and talking about coming back into society, Donna, you mentioned a moment ago that, you know, you're out now, but you can't vote. But what are the other challenges that you face? I mean, what kind of challenges do prisoners like yourself face? Getting a job, reconnecting with society, reconnecting with family?
You know, everything you just said and more. You know, I and none of us are our mistakes, right? And so to me, what that means is that I'm not my mistake. I've served time for the mistake. That mistake, that horrible, tragic choice is never going to change. And so when I've served my time, I come out, yes, we know that's an indelible fact, you know, sadly. If we could change it, we would, right? But we can't, but we can change ourselves. And, you know, I want to shed light on that women struggle in so many ways. Employment, housing, to find our children. So many women have lost their children to the system. You know, this ASFA Act was created so a woman that had spent 18 months or more, you know, would lose her child, you know, and to the system. They would be adopted without any, you know, thought about her and the relationship that maybe she had formed or was trying to form with her child. And that's horrible. Why do we do that?
Okay, I want to get back to Elaine. Elaine, we have a few minutes left. What is your opinion on rehabilitation efforts? Do they work? And what kind of reentry numbers are we seeing?
I want to be clear about something. I ran a prison for almost 20 years, and I worked in corrections for 30 years. I don't believe there's a good prison. And we delude ourselves when we think that there is a good prison. However, you can do things within that environment to help people find themselves, change themselves. Family violence. There are very few prisons with family violence programs. And as the women were saying, when they do have a program, it's one person for 800 or 1,200 people, and that's, you know, we can't say that's a program. Same thing, and mental illness. The number of women who are mentally ill who are in prison is enormous. Is that what we do with mentally ill people in this country? Yes. Right now, we have more mentally ill people in our prisons than were ever in our mental institutions. I don't understand that. But yes, I believe that people change. Donna changed. She came in as a young woman who was a little wild, and she's young. I mean, excuse me, these women are 18, 19, 20, sometimes 16.
Yeah.
They don't have the best judgment.
Right.
It's about learning, and it's about growing.
Yes.
And you have to, and using a regular authoritarian prison is not going to change
Right,
that.
it's about change, and we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Elaine Lord, Donna Hylton, Evie Litwok, thank you very much.
Thank you.